Chris is finally just starting his brand. It's 2014. He's super excited about his first batch of t-shirts that he got made. After he sold a few out of his trunk to his friends and family, he tried to sell some at pop-up shops in his local city. He realized that nobody wanted the shirts, so now he's pissed the fuck off. He's like, how can my friends and family want the shirts, but nobody else want the shirts? So then he tries to take it online thinking that he was gonna make $1 million in his first month of running a brand. He lived in a very illusioned reality. As soon as he puts the t-shirt up online, nobody wants the shirt at all. So now he's really upset. He cries and he sits in his room. Then his dad walks in and says, what's wrong? Chris said, Dad, nobody wants my shirts. His dad looked at him and said, you know why nobody wants the shirts? Chris looked and said, why? His dad said, because nobody values the shirt, that's why, and then closed the door. Once Chris heard that, he was off to the races. He started reading every book and figuring out every way possible how to take a commodity like a t-shirt and make it perceived valuable in somebody's face. As soon as he read the books like Influence, Positioning, 80-20 Laws of Marketing, that gave him enough perspective on how to make his brand valuable. After years gone by, Chris went from selling t-shirts out of a trunk to selling hundreds and thousands of units in a year. Once he got to the point of building out a decent little cult following and building a buzz within his niche, he started figuring out, why won't it blow up? Why can't it be bigger? He tried to put advertisement dollars to work and that shit still wasn't working. He's banging on the keyboard. He's throwing t-shirts at the wall. He's saying that he's going to be done. And then he looked at his traits, he looked at his systems, and then he looked at his self-beliefs and saw that there was a lot of flawed things within that he needed to get to work on to make his brand blow up and become bigger. So a lot of you guys always ask me all the time, how do I get my brand to blow up? Or, hey bro, how do I scale? And hey bro, like, why isn't nobody wanting my shit? And the reality is, it's coming down to a few things that I'm going to talk to you boys about in this video. And this is the truest of the truest shit. You can either take this and leave with a perspective, or you can take it and be like, Chris doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Let me go to the other YouTube guru. He knows more. But the reality is, I know exactly where every single one of you guys are at with your brand. I know exactly what it's like eating top ramen and just drinking Hennessy and drinking Fantas on just trying to survive. And then I know what it's like making $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 plus literally in a day. So I know what it's like from going from not valuable to building a brand that's valuable to doing hyper releases, selling out, getting people to know about me in my city. I know all that because I've been there. I know exactly where every single one of you guys are at right now with your brand. That's why I'm here to give you this full guide on how big will your clothing brand be. So the first thing is this: we need to measure our brand. And the way that we can measure our brand is by our audience pool, how much competition we have, how much demand and need is there for our actual brand. So for an example, when I say audience pool, let's say for example, I'm selling a clothing brand to atheists. Now that might be millions of people, but that's a very small audience pool compared to if I made a brand for dog lovers, right? There's a lot of pet and dog lovers in the world. So that audience pool is billions. The atheists, obviously there's millions, but then it's nothing compared to the dog lover niche. You get what I'm saying? So when it comes to like making a clothing brand for dog lovers compared to atheists, now I can measure to see how big can I max it out. You get what I'm saying? So for example, with my brand, the audience pool was the underground scene. That's the scene that I came up in. And yeah, it's pretty big, but on the grand scheme of things, it's pretty small. A lot of those artists like Suicide Boys and Ski Master Slump God and Ramirez and Jay Cheddar, they all done went kind of mainstream. But at the end of the day, it's like, that's where my origin root is at. It's like from the underground scene. So if you were in high school or in your early 20s, just like 5-6 years ago, that's where you found me at 9 times out of 10. You didn't find me on Fairfax, or you didn't find me on Melrose or anything like that. Like, you found me in the world that only a small group of people really only know about, but the audience pool is decent. But compared to like dog lovers or atheists or something like that, it's obviously a whole lot smaller. But then, just like what I tell people, before we can get the big pool, let's conquer something within the small pool. So that is what we're about to get into. So now when it comes into the competition side of your brand, when we're measuring out our brand, right? So if I'm looking in the underground scene, how many brands am I truly seeing in there, right? So it's like, it might be me, it might be a FTP, it might be, you know, Super Radical, it might be a Half Evil. These are different brands that like we all came from the same lane together. It might be Growth, you know, it might be a Balcony Lifestyle. It's like, how many brands are in there and how many of them are eating up like the actual marketplace? And then that's when you can really sit down and ask yourself, like, well, can I compete with this person, then obviously like we're not in competition, but it's just like I'm all about just out creating. But if there's other people within your lane, it's like you kind of got to look at them and be like on what moves they're making and how much of the market they're eating, because you always got to remember that 90% of the marketplace always goes to the top player, right? So 90% of the market is always going to the top player. So like in my lane, the top player was Zach with FTP. But for me, I was cool with getting 10% of that market, 20% of that market, because I'm willing to come in second. Because one, I don't have the capital dollars at the level that he got, and I don't have the authority contacts that he had of all these influencers within my lane, like wearing his brand. But I was cool getting 10, 20% of that market just off the simple fact that like everybody's fan base that comes from the underground scene is literally a cult following. So I'm like, I'm cool off of getting 10, 20% of the market, because once they fuck with you, it's like they fuck with you forever. And y'all can go look at any brand or any rapper that came from the underground scene. They have a more godly cult following than like some of these artists out here. So last but not least, when it comes to measuring your brand, you need to see how much demand and need is actually there for your brand. And when I say how much demand and need is actually there, how much demand or a need is actually there for the type of brand that you got. So if you guys go look at Fuck the Population, which is FTP, their brand is very anti-establishment, anti-police, anti-government, shit like that. But then when you guys look at my brand, it's very specific on religion and God and the Bible and sinner and saints and crosses and all this other stuff. So it's almost like cohesive together, but both of our brands together made sense within that marketplace. You get what I'm saying? Because the rappers that came out of there, like Suicide Boys and the Jay Cheddar and a Ski Master Slump God and the XXXTentacion and all these artists, they represent both of our brands. You know what I mean? So it made a whole lot of sense. So obviously that there was a demand there when it came to my brand as well. And the thing is with my brand, it's like now I'm super authentic. You know what I mean? Like I grew up religious, you know, like I've lived a holy and an unholy life, and I'm becoming the highest version of myself, like in real fucking time. And like my actual audience like sees that, if you guys follow me on my personal IG, that like I'm becoming a better person as well. But that's what my brand is reflecting. It's reflecting my life and like my views and takes on religion and the government and stuff like that. So when it came down to the demand and for the need of my brand, there was a demand and a need there. So rather than looking elsewhere, you know what I mean, and trying to sell my clothing to a bigger pool of audiences, like, no, I need to serve the people where there's an actual demand and a need for my shit. So a lot of you guys are just throwing spaghetti at the wall right now, hoping that somebody buys into your brand. But you need to look at like, what niche are you in? What category are you in? And like, are you really just talking to that one group of people? Because I always break it down like this. King Von or like a Lil Durk, they're not making music for a Lil Nas X fan base. They making music for niggas in the street. So they are talking to their target audience. So if you got some motion going on, you need to like double down like your life depends on it, and like keep talking to more and more of those people. Talk to 10,000 more of those people, 100,000 more of those people, because at the end of the day, that's when it's just going to become a monopoly effect, and then it's going to make it a whole lot easier and better when it comes to the sales and the traction and the growth with your brand. So now the second way to know on how big your brand would be is, if you can't be number one in the lane, you might as well quit right now. I know that it sounds contradicting, because in the first thing I kind of just said I was willing to be number two, but now that I kind of think about it, it's easier to always be number one. Now let's put things in perspective. Like, who's the greatest basketball player of all time? Michael Jordan. But you always got to remember, like I told you guys in the first lesson, that 90% of the market always runs to the most dominant player. What's the phone that you have right now? Where's my phone at? This right here, an iPhone. And I can almost guarantee you that every single one of you guys has an iPhone as well. So if every single one of you guys have an iPhone, they're obviously the most dominant player in the world when it comes to phones, right? So when you look at Michael Jordan, he's the most dominant player. When you look at football, Tom Brady or whoever it may be for quarterbacks, it's like everybody always runs to the most dominant player, and it makes things a whole lot easier if you can be number one. So if you can't be number one, I say, or number two, I highly advise you to just quit right now, because if you don't have the marketing dollars, if you don't have the influencers behind you, if you don't have any of that to even compete with the first or the second best, at least you might as well should just be quitting right now, because I'm telling you now, it's going to be a long, long, long road. And we can even look at Nipsey Hussle's story like this. RIP to Nipsey Hussle. But Nipsey Hussle, it took him 16 years. He started rapping in 2002, and it took him all the way to 2018 to be considered the best on the West, or one of the most most recognizable or one of the most prolific on the West Coast. 16 years. Now, some of you guys are like, I'm willing to put in 5, 10, 15 years, but are you? Are you really down for that? Because at the end of the day, we all have this thing called life. And every single one of us only 4,000 weeks on this planet Earth on average. You want to have purpose in your life and you want to be devoted, to something. But many people say that they can put in 5, 10 years, but when it really comes push to shove, motherfuckers ain't lasting 180 to even 300 days, right? They tapping right out. The shit is too hard, X, Y, and Z. Now, when it comes to your lane, that's what I'm saying. You guys need to look at the lane that you in, the niche that you in, the specific person that you talking to, and then you got to look at who else is in there trying to serve that person. And you really got to be real with yourself. It's like, can I be number one, or am I willing to do whatever to be number one? And if you are, I got good news for you. Your life is going to be a whole lot easier when you become number one, because 90% of that market is automatically coming over to you. And last but not least, when it comes to this part about being number one in whatever category you in, I highly advise every single person to go buy this book called The Dip, and it is by Seth Godin, and it's basically talking about kind of what I just broke down. I'm going to do a full guide on that as well, but go read the book. It's a really good one, and it talks about when you should quit or when you should not quit, and how long are you willing to stay in that dip, in that gap between starting and the actual finish line. How long are you willing to just sit in there and really thug it out to get to the end goal? So I highly advise every single person to buy that book, but let's carry on. So next up, we have land, labor, capital equals a big success. So basically, when I talk about land, that is basically the more customers you have is the more shield that you will have for your business. The more people that you know in your industry, the more resources that you have, the bigger the shield that you will have for your business or for your brand. But then when we add that, right, that's our land. So the bigger the land, and then when we add the bigger the labor, and the labor is basically us being the GM, because that's what a business owner is. That's what a brand owner is. He's not wearing all the caps. Now, for some of you guys at the beginning, obviously you're wearing all the fucking caps. Majority of you guys that got some motion that's already started, your goal should be the GM that's down looking at the football game. And then you got your operationals person, and that's the coach that's coaching the players, and the players is the people that's doing the day-to-day tasks for you. So my whole objective is, how can I go find a dream team? Now, if you don't have any resources, I highly advise you guys to go into my Discord group, where I have a ton of fucking resources that can help you out, and ton of people up in there that are underdogs and that got something to prove. And that's what I was going to get into. It's like, when you don't have resources, or if you starting from the bottom, it's stupid to go get somebody at the top. I'd rather go get somebody that's at the same level as me and be like, yo, let's Batman and Robin this shit together, and let's go make history. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to run a brand and scale it by yourself and on your own. It's impossible. So you're going to need the dream team. So the stronger of that labor that you have, and the more quality of that labor that you have, then we add the land plus the labor, and now plus the capital. And now when we get into the capital, is our access to business line of credit, our access to liquid cash, access to loans if needed, or potential investors. So when you look at your land, and when you look at your labor, and then if you have more capital as well, it's like the bigger your success is going to be. Now, some of you guys that are just starting out, y'all don't really have that much of a community. Y'all don't really have that much of a team to go delegate and get somebody running with you. And you guys are probably limited on cash. And that is why I do group coaching. And if you guys need any help, and if you guys are ready to spend money and invest in yourself, because I'm giving y'all 8 years of knowledge, I'm giving you 8 years of resources, and I'm getting every single person $50,000 to $120,000 in business line of credit, 0% APR, 12 to 18 months. So now you will have the money to go start your brand and go get that community and go get more customers. And then in the middle part, I'm giving you all of that labor, which is resources from production manager, all the way to my designer, all the way to my person that does customer service, all the way to my person that does web design. And the list just goes on and fucking on. But basically, I want to see every single one of you guys win and at least get to a 6-figure brand. So the more land, the more labor, the more capital, the bigger your success will be in the long run. So this right here is the most important part of the video. And this is exactly what we're going to see on how big your brand can be. And this is the reality. This isn't a belief. This is like actual truth on how big you'll be able to take your brand and how big it can actually become in real fucking time. So what we about to break down is what I call the VRIN score, VRIN. So you're probably wondering, what does this mean? Well, first and foremost, I wanted to shout out Ty Lopez, because back in the day when I was kind of going through it with my brand, I was sitting there like, damn, like how big can I really become? And I was still seeing just 6 figures a year. And I'm just like, why isn't this shit getting bigger? And it had nothing to do with dollars. It had nothing to do with the product. It had nothing to do with the likability and the trust. It was what the VREN score was given to me. So the V basically means valuable. How valuable does the world see your brand? The R means for rarity. How many brands out there are like yours? I is for imitable. How easy is it for you to be copied? And the N is for non-substitutable. If your brand didn't exist, what would the world do to get a brand similar to yours and stuff like that? The next thing that you need to do is rank every question from 1 to 10 and then divide it by 4 to get your total outcome. So we're going to do mine for an example. So for V, when it comes to valuable, how valuable does the world see my brand? I'll give that a 6 out of 10. And the reason why I say a 6 is because, you know, the world values it. We sell out. We do 5 figures every single drop that we do. And, you know, our t-shirts and our clothing is on Grailed. Like, people buy, sell, trade our stuff. It's on Depop. It's on all these things. Like, people buy, sell, trade, Lord knows stuff all the time. So a small piece of the world sees it somewhat valuable, and I'll give it a 6 out of 10. So when it comes to rarity, how many brands out there are like yours? I'll say a 7. And the reason why I say a 7 out of 10 is because we're kind of rare when it comes to the products that we put out. I'm not trying to say that we're this fucking Picasso, you know what I mean? But what I'm just saying is the only type of person that can put out the clothes that I put out is a person that has gone through the path and the walking of life that I have. Because like I told you guys, I put my life experiences on my clothing, like will you go to heaven when you die, and all this other stuff that I put on t-shirts and on clothes, like the Born Center t-shirts, all this stuff. That isn't really for like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, yeah, it's a dope shirt, but it's like, there's a story behind it. So when it comes to like the rarity and the substance, I think that we're kind of like a rare brand. Even though that we are a rare brand, there's a lot of brands out there that are kind of similar to ours, but we got our own lane, you know what I mean? And only a person like me, and I'm not trying to sound narcissistic or nothing, but only a person like me can make the type of brand that I got going on. So I'll give me a 7 out of 10 right there. So imitable, how easy is it for you to be copied? So I would rank myself right there a 5 out of 10 when it comes to my clothing brand. And the reason why I would rank myself a 5 out of 10 is because if you had $250,000, you can easily come and buy me out. You can easily come and be at the same level that I'm at, or if not bigger. You probably wouldn't even need $250,000, just $100,000. So it's really not that hard for somebody to come in and then copy my whole entire blueprint. It's not like I'm supreme with like an 8-9 figure, you know what I'm saying, infrastructure. So next up, we have non-substitutable. If your brand didn't exist, what would the world do to get a brand similar to yours? On this one, I put a 6 out of 10. And the reason why I put a 6 out of 10 is just for the simple fact that it will be hard, but at the same time, it will be easy, because now we live in a digital age where there's so many fucking brands every single day. It's like it's a new clothing brand popping up in front of you. So when it comes to being non-substitutable, it's not like I'm a Palace or Supreme or a Bape where it's like, damn, only Bape can make something like this. Obviously, I got a dope brand and it's kind of rare, and we do sell out of drops and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's a lot of brands that's on my same level that can literally come in if something happened to me today, which I hope nobody does, or I hope I still live today. But if somebody can come in, they can make something very similar to my brand, and then my audience can possibly go over there and buy something from their brand. When you add up all of these numbers, so let's do it. So we did 6 plus 7 plus 5 plus 6. That comes out, y'all see that? 24. Whoa, the lighting. But it comes out to 24. Next thing you got to do is, once you have your number all added up, now what we got to do is divide it by 4. Obviously, you guys can see it comes out to 6, and this is the most important part of the video. So whatever number that you had, if you had anywhere between a 1 to 3, you're only going to see a brand that's 4 to 5 figures. That's a few $1,000s, maybe $10,000 or 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, $90,000. Y'all get what I'm saying? 4 to 5 figures. That's very average. That's no different than somebody working at Pizza Hut or a manager at Plaid Pantry, a convenience store or something. Like, and no dissing to those people, but it's like, that's very average. If you got anywhere between 4 to 7, like I did, that's anywhere between 6 figures to multiple 6 figures. So what I'm saying is $100K all the way up to $800,000-$900,000, right? Obviously, if you had a 7, you might be up there already at $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. You get what I'm saying? And then if you guys ranked anywhere between an 8 to 10, that's minimum $1 million all all the way up to infinite, like literally 9 figure brand. So this is the biggest reality that you guys need to do with y'all brand. And I'm not saying in the future, I'm saying right now, like how valuable is it? How rare is your brand? Is it immutable? And is it non-substitutable? And if you guys are real with yourself and ranking on a scale of 1 through 10, 9 times out of 10, y'all got that number, y'all divided by 4, and it's always coming out to the exact position that you in right now. So like, I'll be lying to you guys if I said I'm this big multi-7-figure brand and we got a fucking fat ass warehouse and I'm pushing 20,000 fucking t-shirts. Like, I'm not doing that. You know what I'm saying? The reality is that like I run a 100,000,000 a year type of brand. But that's where I stand at. You know, when we looked at the Vrend score and it came out to a 6. So the only way that you guys are going to see real money with your brand is if you guys run up the value part of the Vrend score. So if you guys are anywhere between where I'm at or lower, and if you guys want to make more money off your brand, the only way that you would do that is if you guys look at that V, the value, and we just keep raising that. So I got videos where I talk about in my course and stuff like perceived value and influence and stuff like that to keep raising up the bar and making a commodity perceived more valuable than what it is and stuff like that. But for this video, I just wanted to break down to you guys Vrend score and how it can help you and help out your business. And before I go, I wanted to do another example of Supreme. When we look at Supreme with this Vrend score, let's just say when it comes to their valuable, you know, that's a 10. When it comes to their rarity, that's a 10. Imitable, you need billions of dollars to get to Supreme's level. So that's a 10. And then non-substitutable, there's no other brand out there that is close to Supreme on the streetwear and skatewear scene, right? So they damn near got a whole entire 40. So you do 40, you divide that by 4, that comes out to a 10. And that is exactly why they sold in 2020 for, I think it was like $2 billion or some crazy shit like that. So if you guys want to keep raising up your value and you guys want to make more money with your brand, and if you guys want to see exactly how big you will become, you guys need to always do the Vrend score, and it will always show you the reality of where you stand at right now or what's already written ahead of time for you. So if you was a 6, you're only going to be a 6-figure brand. You know, if you was a 5, 6 figures, 7, 6 figs, 1 to 3, you know, different than somebody working at Fred Meyer or Walmart. And then if you were 8 to 10, that's the target zone for everybody. We want to get in that 8 to 10. And if you're not there, because I'm obviously not there, what you guys always want to do is just raise the value. You know what I'm saying? Because once you raise the value, that's when the rarity, and that's when the immutable, and then that's when the non-substitutable all will take care of itself. So just keep raising that value with your brand. And that comes into product delivery, that comes into the marketing, that comes into the sales, that comes into your team, that comes into all these different things. That's what I got for you guys in today's video. And like how I always end every single video, that you guys want to always divorce from the result and embrace the craft. I'll see y'all in the next video. I'm out.